Welcome to John and Dylan Online, a show where two big, fat, wet comedians talk about internet history. This week, we're talking about the man who invented being desperate on the internet, Dane Cook.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This week, it's the guy who made MySpace, nobody's space. It is Mothers, Lock Up Your Daughters Who Just Turned 19. He's heading to an acting class. Dane Cook. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the episode, how about you join our fucking Patreon and give us some money? Dylan, sorry for swearing so early in the episode. There goes those YouTube analytics. We are slaves to YouTube. Free us. Go to Patreon. Freedom. Oh,
Yeah, freedom. So, John, this is going to be like a jazzy one because we're both stand-up comedians, and I'm not that certain I won't have to look Dane Cook in the eyes before I'm dead. So, John, navigate that, please. You're going to look him in the eyes for sure. You live in a la la land.
Dane Cook, listen, here's the thing. Dunking on Dane Cook is very fucking easy if you want to just talk about the fact that he was basically just the affliction shirt, the comedian of the 2000s. Like, it was just, he was what an Ed Hardy hat was. He was what, like, those weird leather jackets that people wore briefly were. Like, it was just like, he was Sam Kinison. He was
Not even. I will.
Joe Rogan.
interrupt.
He was so big. We don't fathom how big he was. So
No,
fucking
I'm not talking
popular.
about the bigness.
Oh,
Here's what I'm talking about, John. I'm talking about the fact that this man, Sam Kinison, had jokes that were literally like, "Oh yeah, everyone should be scared of AIDS. Name one straight guy that's ever gotten fucking AIDS. It's for
yeah.
homos." And he had every time he was on stage, he had two fucking women on stage. Also, one of the things he would do once he ran out of material, this is Sam Kinison, which was pretty quickly.
This is
Because he got famous 6 years into comedy. So
he got
ran
famous
out of
6
material immediately.
so fast. Oh, I know what you're about to tell him. It's the This is amazing.
Yeah,
He'd bring-
call up guys' ex-girlfriends and just be like, "Hey, is this da-da-da? Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated on me, you fucking bitch." And he'd be like, "Yeah, let's go fucking kill her." And he's like, "I want to find and kill this woman." And
we are guilty of hyperbole on this program from time to time. Right now, it's not one of those times.
That is true. That is something he would do.
This is
a lot.
By the way, and it was sometimes they would fake it, sometimes it was real. Because one time, I can't remember, I read this in a book, he freaked out because it wasn't working. And it's because he didn't have an act. Like Sam Kinison has also become a cultural touchstone because of how much Joe Rogan loves Sam Kinison, so he always talks about him, but he was very much one of the store guys. What I am talking about, though, is Sam Kinison was he was the face, he was the tip of the spear of a type of comedy. Andrew Dice Clay, you know what I'm saying? Andrew Dice Clay is a better example of it. Like, he was so specifically associated with one type of comedy, and then it fizzled out because of that. Go ahead. And that's Dane Cook's problem.
That's exactly it. Combined, Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay had an hour and a half, and then that hour and a half basically was received like if you think like male influencers are crazy now, dude, these guys
Skid Row, the lead singer of
money by fucking studios.
Yeah. Like, bear in mind the culture, like, people are like, oh, the culture now is so intense. I'm like, Sebastian Bach, the lead singer of one of the biggest bands in the world at the time at the MTV Awards, wore a shirt that said AIDS kills the F word and was banned off the network. And everyone was like, why?
And then immediately,
oh, you wanted him to be shirtless? Is that why? Is that the reason?
Immediately people are complaining about how it's too fucking PC nowadays. Like, that was the thing in the 90s.
That's where
Dane Cook was literally like, "Yo, you guys know when you're making pancakes? Yo,
yeah, this is the other thing.
You get the pancakes, you get the mix, you put your hands in it. Why do you put your hands in it? What do you put your hands in it? What do you put your hands in it?" It's like, no one puts their fucking hands in it. But it's such a tamer version of the shit you have now, where it's like, when everyone's annoyed by it, like Matt Rife is the new Dane Cook, which is why.
But let me correct, but it's the same thing of Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay were reacting to a time, like, we're in that reaction in the encapsulation. in the same way where Dane Cook was so of the time of the 2000s were so nothing, and it was just like he looks the part, so he's the thing. In that Dane Cook is really big and theatrical. Oh, we love Robin Williams. He's really big and theatrical. Oh, and he's handsome. Okay, he fits the part. But yeah, you're right. Like everything was also like so epic and intense.
But also Dane Cook is the example of like something that happens a lot now, where you look at comedians online, you see people. This happens all the time. Comedian post clip of them killing, and then people in the comments go like, "This must be a laugh track."
Yeah,
but it's like you're not there. And Dane Cook is one of those people who can go on a stage in a club and take the fucking air out of the room with how hard he can kill doing straight up nonsense. Just like he says, like grilled cheese, grilled cheese. You got a grilled cheese backflip, like that's. And then people are like losing their fucking shit.
This is the true inside baseball on this fucking guy. Is Dane Cook killed the hardest at the hottest show in LA in a place called Dublin's. This was a famous, this is a famously big show. It was run by Ryan Sickler, who's now a podcaster, and another guy named Jay Larson, who promotes stand-up comedy at the weirdest nightclubs in Los Angeles and was briefly the comedy booker of the Laugh Factory. And it was a place where agents went, everyone went, and Dane Cook would close every show. The show was so popular, they had another show, I think, in the parking lot. This is how LA comedy is so demeaning. They had another show in the parking lot that you showcased for to get on the main show. Like, it was so fucking insane. And like literally, and people were like, Dane Cook killed the hardest at that. And the other thing is, people always credit Dane Cook with MySpace, the interaction. They also pushed this fucking guy to the moon. He did stand-up comedy on the MTV Video Music Awards and the MTV Awards. He was just fucking everywhere. And he gave everyone his fucking CD, which had his Comedy Central Presents on it. And his Comedy Central Presents looks so different than the other ones. And that needs to be stressed.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's what I liked about Comedy Central Presents. Everyone got their own set.
I agree completely. I think they're still the best versions of comedy specials. They were also like of a time where you could see that some people were just bad at being stand-ups on television because it was like their acts were interactives. And it was also like so many of it was drawn from New York. So it's also very funny in that they all have like a weird New York joke because they're all New York acts. And you realize, oh, they didn't really go on the road. It's very funny.
Yeah, Dane Cook has he comes up through Boston. He starts with like Jill Burr and Joe Jogan.
He's in an improv troupe with Robert Kelly, and they soon start doing stand-up comedy almost exclusively with Patrice O'Neill. And I can only assume Patrice O'Neill bullied the shit out of Dane Cook. Yeah,
well, he clearly bullied most men.
Yeah, he was just a giant bully. Like, that's the other thing. That's like, oh, Patrice, he was a genius. He was robbed. He was also a piece of shit. That guy was on the first season of The Office, and they fired him because he was so unpleasant to the other actors. Which is like, sometimes people get where they deserve. You know what I mean? Patrice is a genius, but it's like that guy's not fun to be around.
Great comedian, but also like I've said this one. Patrice O'Neill is an amazing comedian. If he's your favorite comedian, you're probably fucked because like he is. If he was around now, he would just be in that fucking right-wing.
Oh, I'm so upset he's not around.
Podcast with him like that. He had those his viewpoints were that close to.
Oh yeah,
and like one of the things that got him to pop shortly before his death, he was going to become full famous. But one of the things that got him to pop was literally like he was on Fox News with a feminist and he just fucking yelled her down. Like he just yelled at her the whole time. And Dane Cook comes up through that with, I think it's cool that he had that act when it's like every other comedian must have thought he was a fucking loser. And he's like, no, but I'm killing.
Oh,
and there has to be something about it where it's
people talk about how hard, like they literally, like there are a bunch of people that I've had people describe. They're like,
clean.
You don't.
There's none of it is dirty.
This is the thing.
It's
he is clean. They were like, it was so clean. It was also because there was also like everyone like they really contextualize it too. They're like, you have to remember, stand up in 2005 is either people being really, really alt and weird, or people literally being like, so I have a wife and that means that I'm going to kill her. And it's really, really extreme. And then you have a guy who's got abs who looks like bear in mind, this is Ryan Reynolds 1 is going on at this time, which is also you have to remember that like comedy and mainstream stuff is still very much like Friends and sitcomified, and like Will Ferrell stuff is happening stuff right now, but no one is like a handsome like alpha weird stand-up, and that's what Dane Cook encapsulates, and that like all of his bits are like it's also he's never the loser. It's like he's always like all of his jokes are like, isn't it awesome when you're making breakfast and then later someone gives you money?
Yeah, the only thing I would say about Dane Cook is like the reason that I didn't like him when I first saw him was like he just seems like he's trying super hard. Like he's got the volume at fucking 10.
Completely. But what's so interesting is this, I've never seen this. He was the first one that literally like as he was getting famous, there was like him and John
As soon
Cena.
as he started taking on, people were like, fuck this guy.
Him and John Cena should have a conversation of what it's like to be the most really being famous in an area for people hating you. Like they're the same thing of like, this motherfucker's number one and we eat number one around here.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like as you're rising, the people who are nerds about the thing you do, which is a lot of people, hate you, but everyone who just watches it casually loves you.
And the thing that people do not give Dane credit, that's what I call him. I call him Dane credit.
Dane credit, give him some.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry, Dylan. I'm cooking it up. I'm cooking up his credit for Dane credit. The reason why we are in a stand-up comedy renaissance and that it is a giant big art form with a bunch of different genres is because of Dane Cook, because Dane Cook literally went from comedy clubs to arenas in a year by himself so that he could get the money back that his brother embezzled from him, like improvising an act just because he desperately needed to work, and he applied his and made stand-up comedy so big. So then all those nerds were like, fuck this guy, we need someone different. And here comes Louis C.K., here comes Patrice O'Neill, here comes Bill Burr. Like all these alternatives to Dane Cook are immediately present because there were all these people operating in a vacuum for 15 years. That's the other thing that's amazing about Dane Cook is Dane Cook in the space of 2 years makes people care about stand-up again. No one gave a fuck about stand-up comedy in 2003. People were forming sketch troops. This was the time of improv. And for those of you who don't know what improv is, it is where you don't prepare anything because you're a 35-year-old and you're there to date 19-year-olds. Speaking of which, that's other Dane Cook's ish.
Speaking of improv, you know,
certainly does.
Oh, he loves improv. But that's makes people care about stand-up. It's also like, and I think Dane Cook and Matt Rife share this. There's some Matt Rife stuff going on right now about like people don't like his special or something, but like there's nothing that
of course they don't,
and people hate as a whole rather than a handsome man who's happy.
That's right. And also Dane Cook was no friend to himself.
Sorry, go for it.
Dane Cook was no friend to himself because he also he was also very saccharine. Like Matt Rife is at least being sarcastic and being an asshole and being trolly about it, which is sort of the way to approach it, as opposed to Dane Cook was always like, I keep my mom's number in my phone even though she's dead, because sometimes I want to call her and hear the silence. And in that silence, I thought, make a stand-up comedy special. Like that's like everything Dane Cook. Like that's the problem. Dane Cook's
the Sufi.
That's exactly. That's Dane Cook's problem. Is he did things like invented the Sufi, which is the super FU, which is two fingers.
Well, you know when you're in traffic, will cut you off. You want to give him the finger, but the finger's enough. So I want to give him the fucking other finger, and then that was his like logo.
Yeah, was the Sufi.
That was his fucking.
And bear in mind,
if you like Dane Cook, you have that tattooed on your body.
And
anyone else hears it and they're like, that's fucking open micer nonsense. But he's such a good performer, he got it to work.
Because the thing is no one was performing in stand-up comedy. Like, but bear in mind, stand-up comedy at this time are like dudes still doing impressions like Bob Newhart. Everyone's wearing a sports coat. Like it was
that is being phased out. And then a young guy who's got kids coming to the club and knows how to market to those kids. Like that's really what it is. That's the
completely. And also I wanted to know, like they literally went from a guy.
Killing.
Yeah, he's just killing. This is the other thing is he's killing. Matt Rife is the same. It's like, how did Matt Rife get where he go? Incredibly savvy operator, really positioned himself very wide from a business perspective. Also fucking kills. Like that's the thing. Like people always stand-up comedy really gets a lot of that. Like, I mean, it's such a fucking hard egg to crack. And it's like, or the person that makes everyone go, bah, the loudest, he's gonna win. Like, what are you fucking doing?
If you go like, yeah, exactly. If you make everyone lulls and LMFAO, then your baseline is like really good gigs. You're like, oh yeah, you couldn't pop. Like every time I watch a Dane Cook documentary or a documentary about stand up while doing it myself, and they talk about how he just couldn't break through, I'm like, he's still on TV all the time and playing awesome clubs. Like he's still making a living.
Because Americans are insane. You have to also understand this about Americans, that
anyone outside assumes this is the same thing, where it's like anyone outside. I have a skin disorder, and one of the guys I have to talk to about it is the worst decision I ever made. I'll pick and choose who I tell I do comedy to, and that was a really wrong decision for this guy, because he just keeps on asking me about, like, basically like, oh, don't worry, you'll make it, you'll be famous, and you're like, A, no, I won't. B, I think I have.
Yeah, like I'm fine. Like,
good, man. What the fuck else do you want me to do?
It's also what it is also people don't understand, where it's like, bro, you don't know where I came from. I used to have an amount of roommates that should be illegal. Like this is great. What are you talking about? Because also people think, they're like, well, don't you want to be super famous? And it's like, listen, I would like the money. I know people that are famous. It's annoying as fuck. It's really, do you know how weird it is you're talking to someone and there's 4 people a foot away from you thinking about taking your photo?
Well, also, like, when you were the reason I got into this is to, like, they say, which is certainly true about me, is like you get into comedy sometimes to manage how people laugh at you, and definitely that's how I got into it. And it's like, I don't want to be famous so that, like, mostly people are mean to me.
Yeah.
Or if, like, everyone's nice to me and they love me, one day I put, like, fucking, I don't know, I put marmalade and peanut butter on a sandwich, and then everyone calls in death threats to my family. Like, there is a restaurant guy who was like, yeah, they weren't nice to me. He reviews restaurants, and he kept on, please don't be mean to these people, but they weren't nice to me. And there was a restaurant with a similar name, so they started mailing death threats to the people at that restaurant. And the restaurant, he said, he gave the bad review to. Like, this is horrible.
Yeah, it's too much. It's insane. And it's also like, Dane Cook doesn't get the credit, and the amount of people that like dunked on him, went after him, and like it was so great. Like, it was also, the hate was immediate and insane and incessant, to the point that he got accused of being a joke thief from Louis C.K. And then Louis was in the middle of Louis basically being Federico Frecciarini, the Italian shitty filmmaker of New York. Fuck you, Louis, you saccharine weirdo. So they do this weird episode where Louis visits Dane Cook and they talk about it, but it's a fictionalized show. So is it actually them apologizing? But then people were like, it's okay to like Dane Cook now because Louis forgiven him. And literally the world was a drama club.
That scene is pretty funny.
The scene, it's the, I mean, that
the idea of the scene is that Louis' daughter's fan of Dane Cook, so Louis has to go to Dane Cook and ask him for free tickets, and Dane Cook's like, you really didn't stop those rumors about how I stole your fucking joke, did you? And he's like, no, I didn't. Which is good, because it's 2 perverts, 2 criminal, maybe perverts, talking
2 pervs, and also
they make both of you like them, which is good.
But the best part of that is the part before of it, which is Jim Norton, who's the most outed perv, most honest perv ever, just being a perv at backstage Dane Cook show. Why are you here, Jim? Pussy. I think so. I mean,
but I mean, all right, so go for it though, because the Dane Cook joke thief thing, those are not stolen jokes; those are common thought line jokes. I think that's pretty well known.
It's also this weird thing of the internet has kind of done this whole thing of people, how do I say this? Like, people sort of aped what they perceived comedians wanted out of hating Dane Cook, and that's now applied to internet culture, where you have these YouTube accounts that like break down joke thieves and like do joke documentaries about comedians, and like have the fans turned on Tom and Bert sort of stuff. And this all generated from, I think, the Dane Cook joke thief thing, because it was so clear. You're correct. A lot of that stuff is just common language stuff, in the same way that everyone calls Amy Schumer a joke thief now. And it's like, that's just common language stuff. Like, it was just literally just like, oh, she took a Patrice O'Neill. No, they both were talking about the fucking, like, a hack internet thing. Like, it was just, I don't know. Sometimes fucking people are way too precious about stand-up comedy.
Yeah, and but I mean, everyone delves too much in internet things. But anyway, so I guess where we are right now is we're talking about Dane Cook, where he's like just blown off the MySpace thing. They don't really like mainstream. He doesn't really get that much mainstream attention till it's like by the time he gets the mainstream attention, as John said, people already like have dug their boots in on fucking hating him.
Basically, he went on an arena tour and he had to book two arenas, one for the people all going to his show, and then another arena to contain the rally against him existing. Like it was so quick. Yeah, they were drinking the hater.
Like he was the face of those fucking like it's which is so interesting in the difference between now because like he was the guys. It's like Charlottetown. They would have been like listening to Dane Cook while it happened, but Dane Cook isn't being like, "Let's do a Charlottetown." He's just talking about how like when you get out of a cab, you get out of the cab weird.
I got it. Dane Cook was crypto before crypto. Like people talked about him in the same way. Like, do you like Dane Cook? I do like Dane Cook. Yeah, and then like people are like, I don't really like him. Be like, what? Like that was the same vibe. He was crypto before crypto.
I think you knew. I could definitely tell. You could tell.
Yeah, you also know with crypto. You know immediately.
No, I mean there was a lot of people in it. Honestly, crypto was like.
No. There's a difference. In the same way that like everyone went to go see Dane Cook once because he sold so many tickets, but we're talking, Dane Cook fans and they're crypto fans, same people. You still got a soul patch? You weren't one of those. You tuck it in your dress shirt?
I do not think so. I think the exact opposite. The people who are smug about crypto are the exact same people who fucking hated Dane Cook.
Now they were. I'm talking about then. The people that liked Dane Cook grew up, bought crypto, talked about how they hated Dane Cook even though that they loved him, and now are definitely posting some wild shit under anonymous accounts on the internet.
Well, I just think that if you
I do believe
in 2006 liked Dane Cook and Nickelback, you were having sex in 2006. I don't like either of those things, but congratulations, you were living a better life than me.
Yeah, was I having sex in
I think. Well, you like getting your back blown out? That's what I call when you like Nickelback. Ready to get your back blown out? Yeah. Turns on. This is how you remind me.
Sidebar. I
gets ripped out of your body, bitch.
Now deceased comedy writer and director Paul Byrne once microdosed magic mushrooms and for 3 hours explained to me how This Is How You Remind Me was the greatest pop song ever. Now, I disagree with him entirely, and unfortunately he's now dead, so there's no countering to this point. But it was one of the funniest things I've ever been a part of in my life. Made even better by the fact he apparently, after I went to bed, typed out a transcript and sent it to a mutual friend about how it was the best song ever. What I'm trying to say, guys, is a little microdose of magic mushrooms and a little bit of Nickelback goes a long way to making everyone have some lovely memories. What I'm trying to say is the Nickelback hate and the Dane Cook hate are the two of my favorite hates because the Nickelback hate is even better in that like the entire world basically agreed like, yeah, this band gets to live their dreams, but we're throwing rocks at these motherfuckers.
But once again, like it used to be back in my day, John. Oh yeah.
Oh,
how does that sentence feel?
Sounds good. You look like exactly the guy who should be saying that.
Pair of boots I'm putting on. Back in my day, John, the artist wasn't saying fucked up shit. Their fans were just fucked up. That's what the Dane Cook thing was. Their fans would punch a guy in the face and call him a slur.
That's so funny.
Dane Cook's content was like, when you're on a building, like not in the building, but you're on it, you're on the building. And he was like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to get drunk on vodka and beat up someone who is not as good as me.
So yeah, the guy on stage instead of like, I was wearing a tie. He wasn't from Thailand. They don't have ties there. And the guy on stage is like, I wish they'd all go back to fucking Thailand.
Even saying the name of a country seems off-brand for Dane Cook.
Yeah,
you know what? A skinny tie.
Yeah, I gotta say this.
Pencil tie, more like a pen tie.
Here's something that we've discovered.
Pencil tie, pen tie, and then they're like,
is there a market for
someone small?
Is there some market for a audio only Dane Cook improviser? Because I think you should write for Dane Cook because you've got his voice nailed.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, I don't know what it's like now, because here was my favorite thing about Dane Cook is that guys who were fat like me would try and be Dane Cook on stage because that was their favorite comedian, but they would get out of breath really, really quickly. And then it was like
I'm gonna disagree with you on this, but go ahead.
Created a style of comedy that the same people who did, like, I guess I'm like a disciple of like the people that I really admired and that I'm like that I probably borrow from more than I would want to would be like Jim Gaffigan, Louis. There's even
Bernard
like some Eddie
Manning.
Murphy in there. Just the language part.
Of course.
But like those are the three my three dudes, and I guess prior, but like yeah, I'm getting on there and talking about how and I went into Africa and I didn't see any, everyone. And everyone's like, what the fuck is this guy saying? I didn't see any. All I saw was black people, and everyone's just like, the word cancel isn't enough for what this is about to happen to this guy. He's gonna be shot in the head with a gun that we all pull the trigger of as an audience. Everyone tie your string to the gun. Anyway,
who's the other British comedian that dressed in the flight suit that we watched a bunch of stand-up once, smoking cigarettes in your house in Britain? Oh, what's his fucking name?
Roy Chubby Brown.
Roy Chubby Brown.
Roy Chubby Brown.
It's insane to me when any English person is like,
if you're not British, have to look up Roy Chubby.
Roy
Brown.
Chubby.
It's just a man exhausted. He's exhausted in a fucking janitor suit with a legit pinwheel hat on. Just like, get out of my country. And everyone's like, what? I'm like, you're dressed? You're dressed.
No, you're missing a part. You're missing a part, which is first, before he walks on stage, his entire audience chants, "You fat bastard," and then he dances on stage and then just yells "fuck" and then goes in. Oh, anytime any English person's like British comedy is better than American comedy, I just go Roy Chubby Brown, and a couple of them gone, he's got great timing, and I go, you can fuck off.
There was at my horrible place I lived in England, we had to get a plumber one time, and I was the only one who woke up with the plumber, and we actually had a really lovely conversation. He's a guy who I told I was a comedian too, and it paid off because he was a lovely man. But then he told me that he went to a comedy club in England and that they roasted a dude in the front row. And he's like, man, it was so racist. It was crazy racist. And then later on, he was like, have you ever seen Roy Chubby Brown? And I hadn't. And that's how I saw him. So I'm like, man, if he likes Roy Chubby Brown, what the fuck did the guy, the MC do?
Oh.
He just like hit it, just start stabbing him. He's like, well,
it's very possible because you have to remember. So in England, that circuit, there was
finished my Dane Cook's point yet.
Go ahead. Go finish your Dane Cook point. Finish it.
I just wanted to grind it to a halt. We were on a no, but all right. Anyway, no, there was a guy who was like easily 240 pounds, and he would try and pace the stage like Dane Cook. He'd be like, "You guys know bananas? You peel over, you peel banana skirt brown, and then you bake with." It was like, dude, I've laughed a lot. The Keystone Cops in Edinburgh sketch troupe I saw where they just swore and said they fucked dead bodies made me laugh really hard. But this guy being out of breath but still not giving, like, to the point where I remember, like, I was like, are they gonna take the mic off this dude and be like, listen, man, you can't go on anymore, we're worried about your health.
Is this guy still do it? Because I think I know who this was.
You don't. I know. We all wish we did, but that was the thing. Dane Cook created, like every big comedian, he created a type of comedy, and the type of comedy that he created was the best to see at open mics because it's so individual to him. It makes no sense. He creates a reality through that live show that is completely insane, and then people try and replicate it, and it is so funny when it goes like. Jerry Seinfeld like all of the Seinfeld knockoffs, like you can kill really well as a Seinfeld knockoff
because it's
something basic, you could write down and understand.
It's essentially notice minutia and report minutia back to people aware of minutia. Hey, we all have this thing in our house. Here's a thing you've also noticed. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
as opposed to Dane Cook is like, I don't have a house. I have a home spelled with a Z.
Yeah,
Zeds
what if we
are
go for all
knives.
turtles? Just turtles. Inside, inside,
Fuck me.
inside, inside,
You are
inside.
so good
Turtles.
at pretending to be Dane Cook premises. It's
Thank you.
so creepily insane. Like it's because you also nail the intonation of how he begins sentences. Here's a fun fact about me. I love impressionists in the same way that I love magicians. I'm like
Do
in
magic,
awe.
but with their mouth.
Oh my god, I find it. How do they do that? And it's you have the name, you have the clip. He starts every word where it's like, and then, and you do it like, I'll place my penis in the urinal and I piss directly in the drain.
Okay, so now we've bullshitted about Dane Cook. Time to talk about very quickly. Here's how it goes. Arenas. Everyone loves, hates him. He hosts SNL a couple times. He does some movies. The movies are okay.
They're okay.
Like they make money, but not enough money. So he never gets to that extra stratosphere.
So
This is very
basically,
key. He tries to fund his own movie when he's like, I'm not getting the roles that I want. By that time, it's swung from a lot of people don't like him to most people don't like him. Like it's even in vogue. Like it's like on Family Guy making fun of Dane Cook. Like other comedians are taking shots at this dude so much that he is now just like, even people who don't understand why they don't find him funny just think he's not funny. And then he puts that movie in. That movie fails. I'm not sure of the timing, but like he discovers his half brother is stealing most of his money after that movie.
no. He's the discovery of his brother stealing his money was before Vicious Circle. So it's actually before he does Arenas. So it was basically like his whole rise, all that money's gone. And then he does Arenas and it got him back to basically where he was on that one tour. And Dylan's completely right. He also does a serious Kevin Costner movie that's kind of lame called like Mr. Brooks or something like that. And then he finances his own movie, does a weird sitcom with pilot with Jeffrey Tambor that was considered one of the worst pilots ever created in the history of Hollywood. Like he has some like misfires. He's just too big. He has to go away. And he eventually does, has a giant falling out with the Laugh Factory. His ego kind of is all fucked because he was like famous and then attacked by everyone. And then he just sort of sits out 2009 to 2013 kind of.
Yeah, and then kind of comes back like but it's weird thing about who gets to come back and who doesn't. Like Nickelback is having a resurgence now.
They went country.
Pardon me.
Nickelback went country is how they did their resurgence.
Oh, okay. Well, Dane Cook like really hasn't had that much of a resurgence because when everyone looked like, hey, what's Dane Cook up to? You know, we were kind of mean to that guy. Oh, he's dating someone who just turned 18.
Yeah. First of all, Dylan, incorrect. She just
more
excuse me. Excuse me.
Where it's like, hey, we're married at 16. No, don't look into what happened before that.
First of all, hang on, Dylan. She was 19. And yeah, no, you
at 18.
You basically.
By the way, that is something that everyone in comedy clubs would laugh at in 2005. Was like, oh, how old are you turning? A girl will be like 19, and then you just hear men go, and then
yeah,
would go, that's the sound of everyone getting hard, and then the crowd would go crazy.
Oh.
And I was always like, that's fucked up. There, it's just everyone bigger than you would just like to let you know, small person, we're gonna take it.
I will never forget a stand-up comedian who's now dead pointed at a guy and went, "Is that your daughter?" And he went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Your daughter's so hot, I bet you want to fuck your daughter." Applause break.
What was it?
Lawrence Morgenstern.
Lawrence Morgenstern, who is now dead. Also, anytime a guy would get up alone, he would go, "All homosexuals report to the bathroom." Passed.
Claimed he invented it. Claimed he invented it. He told me I get to do that still. I invented it.
I invented that. Oh man, he is a fucking mess.
I posted this online, but this is true, which is Lawrence Morgenstern, Glenn Foster, and I driving from Ottawa to Toronto in the night, and it took an additional 2 hours because Lawrence stopped at every time Tim Hortons to buy a bagel because Glenn Foster said he'd never had a Tim Hortons bagel before. It was mental.
That's Glenn Foster does have some funny stories about like him and Lawrence Morgenstern going to a buffet, and he realized for 45 minutes they had just talked about other buffets they went to. Anyway, Dane Cook. He he dates a 9-year-old now. Everyone they tried to come for him, but he kind of just has the people that like him at this point. Like all internet people, where it's like if you're okay with just some people liking you, which a lot of people who get to that aren't. They want everyone to they want to be fucking Tom Cruise famous.
Yeah, no.
Dane Cook will never be Tom Cruise famous, but he has a level of fame where it's like he's fine forever.
Dane Cook, supposedly his house, where one of his most recent specials is just shot in his backyard, which really, like, how fall have you fallen? I think it was a COVID situation, if I'm totally honest. That said, his house is directly above the Laugh Factory, which he owns a portion of, so he can just go in there and do stand-up anytime he wants. He's one of those guys that really just likes being a stand-up no matter what. His life is fine. But yeah, the craziest bullying. But Dylan, you make the best point, which is it was literally the world was ready to forgive him, and it's like they opened his hatch, and then a baby was like, "I'm the girlfriend." It was like, "Okay, well, goodbye."
Well, that is the thing. Oh, that's the interesting thing. There is a time. I don't know if it's 15 years. Well, maybe it was like because I remember people watching his last special was in 2022, I think, and I remember people telling me who are old Dane Cook fans, basically doing like the thing where they're like, I'm middle-aged now. I wonder if that thing I liked is good.
Yeah, great point.
They're like, oh, no, it's bad. Not only was that special bad, it's accompanied by the fact that he's like dating a toddler. Because he tried to be like, I'm back, I'm Dane Cook, like things are good.
Oh,
again.
yeah.
And you were like, no. And also,
Cook
himself has gained weight and become that open micer where it's like he just can't be as energetic anymore because if you're in your 20s and you have that much energy, that's an excitable guy. If you're in your 40s, oof.
Oh, bad. He's also had some rough plastic surgery. Listen, that new special. The other problem is he does bits about the age of his girlfriend, and he literally goes, he was like, well, for the first 20, like he does the thing where it's like, well, the first 26 of my years of my life, she didn't exist. And the audience kind of goes like, oh.
Yeah. Which in 2005, though, that would have been like,
oh my God, you literally hear someone get a hard dick. Like you would hear
the whole crowd.
Sauce.
All right, everyone, time for a break. We all just group shoot. That's a group shoot. Everyone laughs. Group shoot.
Do you ever think about like Bill Burr is like having a nice drink and he's this business impresario of stand-up comedy and he just thinks, wow, I started stand-up comedy with a man who's had his stomach stapled, who now just does weird comedy videos from his shed, Robert Kelly, dead person, Patrice O'Neill, and a technically not a pedophile man who used to fill arenas and then shot a special in his backyard.
I mean, he probably is like, they were always like that. So he's like, oh, everyone knows. And then he goes
I think you're exactly right. That's exactly correct. I think he's probably like, yeah, that's right.
Honestly, the stomach stapled live in your shed thing doesn't faze me at all. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we'll be back next week with an episode of this show.
Join our Patreon or don't. I don't fucking care. Dane Cook.
Oh, he cares. He really cares.
I do. I really care. We need this. Please help us. We don't